Up next, we bring you coverage of the Muslim Americans Political Awareness Conference. The topic of this session is politics and contemporary social issues.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد. A very interesting session, distinguished speakers. The theme is very dear to our hearts, and it is one of the greatest challenges facing the growing Muslim community in North America towards formulating a Muslim agenda. It is a window to look into the future with insight, to mature our participation as an active force for truth, good, and peace on earth in this land. To my right, we have our dear and distinguished sister, Amina Alsilmi, and a very active Muslim participant in our community. Her encounter with Islam is very interesting. She wanted enthusiastically to introduce her faith as a Christian to some of the Arab students. Some of them gave her a hard time, and she had to do her homework, and her encounter with Quran and Sunnah and Islam started. She employed her skills as a professional communicator, a person who specialized in mass communication, in her involvement in the Islamic work. She worked as an assistant to the general editor of the American Trust publication. Now she is the officer being responsible for ISNA's, the Islamic Society of North America's 26th annual convention, where, by the way, each and every one of you is kindly invited to attend in Dayton, Ohio, starting from September 1st through 4th. Next to Sister Amina, may Allah bless her, is our dear brother and good friend, Ghayth, Kashif, Noor. Very, very beautiful name. Ghayth meaning a source of relief. Kashif means the person who unveils, brings the light into the picture. Noor is light, is a noted and respectable Washington writer, has been with Islam for more than 3 decades. And alhamdulillah, he has witnessed a lot, witnessing the early stage of the Muslim community 30 years ago or more. He has maintained a close touch with Islam. Now he works as an editor with the Department of Publication in the IIIT, International Institute of Islamic Thought. Previously, he was responsible for the American Journal of Muslim Social Scientists, and is a very wonderful brother. I enjoy being with him, reading him. Next to him is another distinguished speaker, a brother with a very rich career as far as involvement in the Islamic work, born in Sudan nearly 43 years ago. Brother Almahdi completed his undergraduate work in Islamic and Arabic studies, and coming to the States nearly 13 years ago, he worked as the Imam and director of Jamia Mosque. He enjoyed the same position in Montreal, Canada. And more importantly, he has been very active participant in our growth, our attempt to make the Muslim presence here more dynamic in the Islamic Society of North America. He served in the Executive Council as Vice President for ISNA, representing Canada, as President for the Islamic Society of North America. He currently is putting the final touches on his PhD dissertation with McGill University. And he's many things more. He's a good friend and a good brother. Next to him, to Brother Qutbi, is our dear brother, Dr. Islam Ahmed Siddiqui. Brother Islam is the president of the United Muslims for America, or Ummah. Ummah, as you know in Arabic, means the community. Finished his PhD from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign in 1968. Brother Siddiqui moved to the West Coast and is very actively involved with the political process and the Muslim issues. Finally, we have our dear and good brother and friend, Dr. Syed Imtiaz Ahmad. He's currently a full professor of information systems in Eastern Michigan University. He was also a professor and head of the Department of Computer Science in the University of Windsor. Currently, he is the Vice President of the Islamic Society of North America, representing Canada, and he is the President of the Association of Muslim Scientists and Engineers. He's also the Editor-in-Chief of the International Journal of Science and Technology. Copies will be available to you, inshallah, outside. I chose to introduce our distinguished panelists in the beginning so we know whom we are dealing with. I'm going to start, inshallah, by Sister Amina. Just a reminder, the theme, as you know, is very important towards formulating Muslim agenda. Our Sister Amina will be the first speaker if she chooses to address us from where she is. Yes, she is most welcome, and I will request her to come to the podium, please.
Assalamu alaikum. To begin with, I think we have to recognize that as Muslims, we are not able to accept involvement in anything that allows the continuation of injustice and wrong action. Now, many people will say, well, that means that we cannot be involved in the political system of this country. But maybe we need to think about this a little bit more. We cannot accept a political system or any other system that will allow the continuation of injustice and wrong action. We as Muslims are also required to stop the wrong action by our hand if possible, and hands have many uses, including pulling the little knob that registers a vote, and our tongue, which can be used in many ways, including educating people through political involvement, through community involvement, as to what is correct action. I do not believe there is any other place in the world at this time that we have quite as great an opportunity to institute change as what we have here in this country at this time. When we start talking about establishing a political agenda, I think we are in total agreement that we as Muslims have an agenda, Allah's agenda, Islam. What we need to talk about a little bit more is formulating a plan of action for instituting that agenda. There are so many things that we need to do, that we must do, in order to do what is required of us as Muslim. We need, first of all, to educate ourselves about Islam. One way would be to establish a series of workshops and seminars throughout the country that would be easy for Muslims in different cities to attend, to educate ourselves about Islam, to educate ourselves about what is in the Quran and what is in the Sunnah, to discuss the areas of misunderstanding and discuss the best ways of presenting them. We must not, under any circumstances, accept a compromise of our belief. But we need to understand our religion a little bit better ourselves. And we need to learn to present our beliefs to people. Our Islam is not enough when it is kept trapped in our heart, where no one can hear it and no one can see it. We hide our Islam by our dress. We hide our Islam by our actions. And we're cheating all of civilization of this beautiful gift. We're very selfishly guarding it for ourselves and refusing to share it. This wonderful thing that has the answers that everyone is searching for. The people of the world at this time are suffering. Not just the Muslims, the people of the world are suffering at this time. Parents are afraid to allow their children to go out and play for fear the child will be kidnapped and molested. Women are afraid to walk on the streets for fear of being molested or attacked. Old people afraid to go out of their homes because they'll be beaten, killed, robbed. Strong, healthy individuals, nervous and spending fortunes guarding their homes with security systems because they're afraid when they go out of their homes they'll be robbed. People watching things on television and movies on the streets that they find extremely offensive and not knowing what to do about it, being afraid to speak out because they don't want to seem to be bigoted or narrow-minded. So they sit and they suffer.
Allahu Akbar,
In Islam, we must
Allahu
try
Akbar,
to change things for the better with our hand,
Allahu
where possible, with our
Akbar,
tongue, where it's not possible to use the hand, and at
Allahu
least
Akbar.
hand. Inshallah, just taking it
أشهد
is
أن
not enough for the
لا
Muslims in this
إله
world.
إلا
We as Muslims want for our brothers
الله.
and sisters that which we want
أشهد
for
أن لا
ourselves. And I'm sure we
إله
all
إلا
want the very best for ourselves.
الله.
And we must want that for our brothers and sisters,
أشهد
even those that you may
أن
not know yet are Muslim. And
محمد
there are many
رسول
people out there that are Muslim
الله.
and just don't know it.
أشهد
And you have to remember
أن
that when you
محمد
meet people,
رسول
they may be Muslim and just don't know it yet. And we want for them
الله.
that which we want for ourselves.
حي على الصلاة،
The
حي
peace
على
and security of
الصلاة،
Allah that we know inside of ourselves. We want
حي
them
على
to know that the things that will help
الفلاح،
them to attain
حي على
success here in this world and in the hereafter. We want them to have the freedom to choose to do what is right without fear of
الله أكبر،
discrimination. We want our brothers
الله
and our
أكبر،
sisters
لا
to have the right to choose
إله إلا
what is best for them. what is best for a system, not is what is best for a group of people, but what is best by the guidelines that have been set by Allah, because through those guidelines we will be able to establish what is best for all of humanity. We need as Muslims to be involved with people, whether it is on the city level, the local level, the state level, the national level, or the international level. We as Muslims must be involved in people. See, there's three ways that we can change the world. One is by revolution, which has its own source of problems. And one would be to work within a system and make the changes from within. And the other is what I like to call attraction and reversion. I advocate for the last, attraction and reversion. We want to attract the people with our nur. We want to attract the people to Islam through our example, and through that knowledge that they attain, to allow them to revert to being Muslims should they choose, keeping always in mind that there is no compulsion and that we as Muslims must guarantee religious freedom for all people, whether they choose to be Muslim or whatever else they may choose. But attraction and reversion requires an involvement with the people. When you're involved in the political system on your local level to change the school system so that Sabi Hamid is allowed in the school, so our children are allowed to make Jummah prayer, so our children don't have to participate in Christmas programs and Easter programs and Halloween contests and all of these other things that are very offensive and distressful to us. When you're involved in that, you're introducing people to Islam. You're introducing people to the truth, and you're helping to ensure justice in this country. When you're involved on a city and state level to prevent the passage of laws that allow injustice or to change laws that permit injustice to continue, you do this through the introduction of Islam, because Islam does not allow injustice in any way. When you're involved on the national level or international level, the way to do it is through introduction of Islam, through your example, through you not allowing injustice to continue, through letting the nur of Allah to shine through our faces and through our actions, through our lives, to where the other people are attracted to us and would like to have that which we have. This is political action in the very strongest way. We as Muslims have an agenda. We have the agenda of Allah. But we need to work harder on getting the agenda to the people so that they have a chance to choose that agenda. Workshops to educate people about Islam, Muslims about Islam. Workshops to train Muslims in public speaking, in effective use of the media, and in how to and why to register to vote. Starting a voter registration campaign along with the education program to show the people how and why they should have their voice. This is required by Islam, that we use our voice to prevent wrong action. We need to choose the areas of initial involvement and concentration on the local, city, state, national, and international level. And then we start, after that, introducing Allah's agenda, showing the people that Allah, from the beginning, showed us what the solution was to every problem that is in existence. For there is no problem in existence today, or will there ever be a problem, that is not covered in Quran and Sunnah. And we can bring this solution to the people, and they will be very eager to receive it. I stood before a Methodist church in Virginia a few years ago with a congregation of over 400 people, and we discussed the issues of Islamic punishment. And in the beginning, they felt that the Islamic punishments were extremely harsh and that there was no mercy in Islamic punishments. But by the end of our discussion, almost the entire congregation wanted to institute Islamic law as far as punishment for crimes in this country. This is presenting Allah's agenda. This is giving people an option, an understanding, so they have an option. Right now, there is no viable option. They don't know where to look. They don't know where to turn. And we have this in our hand in the Quran and in the Hadith. And we have to learn how to share this. Every time that we are seen, every time that we speak, we have the power to change the system that we live in. But the power comes only when we speak truthfully, with knowledge, and with commitment. You have to know that if you speak, and you are speaking without the knowledge and without the commitment, that the people will not hear you and remember what you have said. The political system of this country is not, as some people would believe, evil, unless you make the political system of this country your God. And then you and the system are both evil. The political system of this country is a method through which we can enlighten the world. The political system of this country is a method which we can use to bring peace to the universe. The political system of this country has great potential because it is a system that allows for growth and change. But if the growth and the change is instigated by people of ignorance, then the system will remain in ignorance. If the change and growth is instigated by people with nur, then it will become a system filled with nur. All success in this life and in the hereafter is with Allah. And when we start talking about setting an agenda, this is what we must keep in our mind, is that all success is with Allah. The Muslim people have an agenda. We have the agenda of Allah. Now we must reacquaint ourselves with that agenda, implement that agenda in our minds, in our hearts, and in our lives, and then bring that agenda to all of humanity. Because then, and only then, will we see a world of peace, justice, and tranquility. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much, Sister Amina Alsilmi. Now Brother Kashif, Ghayth, Noor, Kashif.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his servant. My beloved brothers and sisters, it's a great honor to be able to participate in this historic conference. I think that the American people will be proud that such a conference has taken place. As we all know, in America, there is a great appreciation of the process of involvement of all of its citizens. So I think this conference can really go to the heart of the American people to know that the Islamic community is moving forward toward involvement in the entire process of the American life, not so much as to be subsumed under it or to attach itself to the traditional ways of politics, but to bring something to the American people, to offer something to them that will help them, that will relieve some of the pressures that exist, that will clear up some of the religious problems that have grown into America and its secular life. So it's very important, and all of us who are here are working together to see how we can better the American life through the practice of Islam. There are those who have said prior to this conference that there is a question of legitimacy for Muslims to be involved in the political process. However, our book, the Quran, given to us by Allah, states, "And let there be among you a community calling others to good, to command equity, and to forbid evil, and those who attain the felicity." Allah has ordained that the Muslims become a witness to mankind. And in order for Muslims to carry out this edict, they must be involved in promoting a better society and a better way of life. America is indeed a very great country with even greater potentials. It would be tragic to see such a country fall victim to the things that other countries have fallen victim to. Go the way of Rome, go the way of Nazi Germany, go the way of Greece, and go the way of all these other countries. It would be a shame. But America has hope. It has hope in this revived community of Islam that now have come together as a ummah to involve themselves in making America a better place. The American people should welcome this, and we as Muslims welcome the opportunity to participate in this way. When the Muslims were in the minority in Mecca, Prophet Muhammad guided them in such a way that they were able to survive the oppression of Mecca. His moves were actually political and strategic. Even the Hijra was political as well as a military decision. And when he negotiated a treaty, as we all recall from the history, in order to have the Muslims to be able to come and make the pilgrimage, we all know that he signed documents there that some of the Muslims thought it was a sellout of the Muslim community because he agreed that they could not come that year, but in the following year. But it proved a strategic and a proper move. And this was what was the will of Allah, and the Quran verifies this by saying that it was a great triumph. It was a turning point for the Muslims, and the Muslims succeeded from there on, and eventually all of Mecca became Muslims. Today we are in an era of ijtihad, of reasoning, taking the reasoning that Allah has given us with, using the criteria of the Quran, and trying to come together to formulate an agenda which will be good for us. Now, as we know, that Muslims do not embrace traditional politics, not in the sense that it would be taking on the same characteristics that are traditional for the American politician. I mean by that the bribes, the underhanded deals, the falsifications of ballots, and those kinds of things. Any instrument of government is neutral in itself. The people themselves make it evil or they make it good. The Muslims want to bring back character to any political system, no matter where it is. And if you allow Muslims into the political system, they will make it a much better political system. In the past, however, here in America, we must acknowledge that many of the Muslims have become isolationists, and their views have narrowed, and their agenda had narrowed, basically to religion, to fiqh, and to rituals, and to fiqh. Thus, the Muslims found themselves perpetually reacting to the agendas of others, or to the agenda of other people, or to other groups. Now, Allah says in Quran, "And why should you not fight in the cause of Allah and those who being weak or ill-treated and oppressed?" The Muslim women and children whose cry is, "Our Lord, rescue us from this town whose people are oppressors, and raise for us from the one who will protect, and raise from us from the one who will help." Now this verse in the Quran is one of an appeal by a people who need help. Now, do we not see the same kind of anguish, the same kind of appeal here in America? Do we not hear the American people crying out? Cannot we see that the country is infested with dope, that the educational system is in chaos, that the political system is now in a state of confusion, unable to make sound and just decisions, bound up by treaties that have tied the American people's hands and tied the American government's hands from doing what is best? They need a rescue, and perhaps this conference, the conclusions that comes from this conference and the agendas that come out of this conference can help the American people. Now, this session is titled "Toward Formulating a Muslim Agenda," and I felt that it would not be necessary, because I'm sure that an agenda will be formed, to try to outline some type of agenda or the items of the agenda that we should undergo. I felt that it was better to talk about some of the thought processes that are necessary to develop a proper agenda. Until nearly 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to formulate a preamble for a meeting of several Muslim brothers who were concerned about some of these issues and concerned about the things that were going on in our society. And this preamble reads as thus, and we can apply it to ourselves here. At this very moment, there is a group of men and or women somewhere in an open forum or a private meeting planning our future. I repeat, at this very moment, there is a group of men or women somewhere in an open forum or private meeting planning our future. They will be justified in claiming the right to decide our future if we have no plans of our own. We shall forfeit our rights even to protest unless we agree to sit down and plan a future for ourselves, for our children, and for the societies in which we live. Now, we call this defensive thinking. We raise these questions. Who are the people deciding our future? What are their purposes? What are their plans? How will they affect us? And how shall we know their plans? Shall we support their plans? Are their plans good for us? Or shall we counter their plans? And then we turn to the question of establishing an agenda. We must always begin with the critical question, and this is one. The first one is this: assuming that we have laid down some plans or an agenda previously, where do we expect our plans to culminate? If we've laid down plans in the past, where will we be 5 years from now? Now, this is the thinking process. Apply it to yourself individually, for your home or your family, or for your, perhaps your trip next year or the Hajj or somewhere. Are your plans in sync? If you made plans, have you monitored the plans? And can you predict or estimate or guesstimate where you will be or where your plans will be 5 years from now? You can go and you can ask any Muslim or, in fact, Christian or anyone really these questions. You'll find that it's very difficult to answer. But the people who rule and the people who make things happen are people who follow this thought process. At least that's what we've come to understand. So as you can see, we're firmly convinced that we must develop an effective process of thought as a prerequisite for laying down plans to affect our future. The better laid plans, the better the plans are laid, the easier it is to project into the future. It's important to understand that we that there can be no successful plan in a vacuum. This has been the failing of the Ummah worldwide. It must be realized that a successful agenda must be planned with respect to the playing field where other agendas are vying in competition. Even the priorities we give to the items on our agenda must be considered and planned in light of such competition. We might ask ourselves this question: what impact does the recent Supreme Court decision have on the Muslim community? How is that going to affect us now and in the future? What plans should we make to benefit from those rulings, if they're positive? And what plans should we make to nullify these decisions or counter them if these plans have harmful effects upon us? We must plan well into the future and anticipate things in order for us to make an agenda. Now, we might also ask, what effect of any given foreign policy action by the government, what impact does that have on our Ummah in America? And we must consider what actions we should take, what plans we should make into the future. Now, let's give an example. Everybody knows about the Rushdie book, the blasphemy. Let us look at this. The Muslims were taken by surprise and really a propaganda beating at that time. This has changed now, and the American people, as time has gone on, have come to know that the book absolutely was blasphemy. And as a result of the Muslims' counter-arguments, many people now are forming groups to attack such scandalous propaganda, pornography, terrible television programs of violence, you can see. So we have gotten some good consequence out of it. But from the propaganda, initially, we were bested in that, the Muslims were. Now, if the Ummah, knowing the propensity of the publishing houses, especially coming out of London, if the Muslims had calculated the trend and the psycholistic kinds of attacks that have come, the Muslims could have been better prepared with contingency plans of one thing or another, the media or whatever, to have countered the Rushdie book prior to it coming out. A book could have been written prior to Rushdie and published, which would have nullified anything that Rushdie has said. But this is anticipated planning. This is strategic planning. This is done by all people and all nations that have ever achieved anything, and we, the Muslims, have to develop this in this way. Now, a successful agenda must be planned with critical attention to the priorities of the issues, as we have stated. Can the Muslim community be successful and act as a balanced collective if one half of the community is rich and the other half poor? One half in ivory towers, others in slum tenements. One half economically solvent, the other half poverty-ridden. one half academically degreed, and the other half high school dropouts. Now, my reason for saying that is that in every society you have this. But the wise societies try to bring about a balance in their way of life and in their people. The Quran is based on balance, the mizan, if I'm not pronouncing it correctly. Throughout the Quran, it is balanced. If we're able to balance our communities, we can then get the benefit from all of the people of our community. We know that we know of a hadith which speaks about the neglect of a given part of the body. I cannot quote the hadith, but I know it states that if your arm, if something is wrong with your arm, it affects the whole body, or something is wrong with some part of your body, it affects the whole. You have to take care of that which hurts you. We have to look into the Ummah and find the Muslims that are hurting. And we must try to heal that, because if we can't heal that, then we'll all be hurting. We must go as a unified body, and this must be the way of our Ummah. Another important consideration is the awareness of the culturally inherited abilities and expertise that some of our people have, even as ethnic groups or as individuals. We must work an agenda in order to facilitate the capacities of individuals who have particular skills, and we must also do this in terms of collective groups of people. There is a fact in life that there are various different groups, tribes, races, who have particular propensity to be able to do various things. Now, that doesn't mean that one is better than the other. Allah blesses each people and each person with something that they're able to do better than anyone else. Allah has given each individual an individual fingerprint. No one else has your fingerprint. That should tell you that you are an individual in Allah's sight in the collective. But that also should let you know that you have something and a perspective that no one else has. So if you can bring your perspective, if you can bring your talents and your people from yourself and from your group to the collective, then these things can be put into an agenda. I want to conclude here in quoting the final comment of the preamble document which we wrote for that earlier meeting that I talked about. And it states, "This meeting has been designed to assess the priorities and to determine the effectiveness of our thought processes as they relate to our growth and development of the Ummah. With its commonality of interest, and the number of people is not important, but the capacity for original thinking, mature emotionality, practical planning, and strategic foresight is imperative." Now, it's a lot of gobbledygook in this. I read it slow so you could possibly understand it. But what it simply means is that people have to lower their egos when they come into working together in agendas. There was a beautiful song, "We Are the World." That song was accomplished, and it sent so much beautiful music around the world by an act done by the director. All of these people were entertainers. All of them had huge, oversized egos. How could you get them all to come together and work together? The director put a sign over the door. When they walk through, it says, "Leave your ego at the door." And they had a beautiful song. That's a lesson to all of us, and I think we'll all be successful. I want to thank the chairman. I want to thank the ISNA PAC, Brother Almahdi, who worked so hard to help put this together, for giving us an opportunity to express ourselves in a meeting like this. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. And Allahu Akbar. And all of us, Ya Akhi al-Habib, here and in the rest of America, thank you, Brother Kashif. And now, brothers and sisters, to the heart of formulating the Muslim agenda with our dear distinguished guest, Brother Qutb al-Mahdi.
الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Throughout the program, few questions seem to dominate our discussion. The first, are we writing our agenda or Allah's agenda? Should we participate or not? And then, consequently, we arrive to the most fundamental question: what did the Prophet ﷺ do? This last question, I happen to like it so much for two reasons. One, because this is the normal Islamic attitude. When we debate something, when we disagree, when we are in a state of crisis, then we refer to the example of the Prophet ﷺ and to his guidance and to the Quran. The second reason is, in North America, we are a young, growing community. And we also see the rest of the society, if we think optimistically, as in a state of transition. We always say we want to change this society. We want to transform it. So let us think this way, that America, seeing the crisis which is burdening its conscience right now, the social, the psychological problems which is burdening its shoulders, is looking for a solution. And we want to take part and contribute towards that solution. So let us see ourselves exactly like the Prophet ﷺ and the early generation of the Sahaba. Let us look at America as a society and a country in a state of transition, waiting for our contribution. No matter what course this contribution might take. What did the Prophet ﷺ did? What did he do? This is a good question, but when we ask this question was asked last night, there is a host of other questions that had to go with it. What did he do? When, where, and why? Otherwise, we get a wrong message. A hadith was quoted last night when the Prophet ﷺ told his uncle Abu Talib that if they put the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left hand, so that I might give up my mission, I'm not going to do it until I die, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it prevail. This hadith was said not to shun away from participation, but from compromise. Not only compromise, but sell out, because they wanted him to give up his da'wah. So that's why he said that. It's not because he did not want to participate. It is because he did not want to sell out. He did not want to compromise. So participation was not ruled out because of this hadith. What did Abu Bakr do? What did Umar do? What did Uthman and Ali and Umar ibn Abdul Aziz and Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi did? All these people did different things because they lived at different times, they have different priorities, they have different emphasis, they have different challenges. You have to see the whole picture. As long as participation does not mean assimilation or compromise or sellout, then it is needed. a dynamic and positive Muslim always takes part. Syed Qutb developed a very important Islamic concept. He called it Al-Uzla-Sh'uriyya. That's psychological isolation. I don't think that's a proper translation, but what he means is that a Muslim always feels that he's unique, he's different. He stays away from what other people are doing. But that's only psychological. That's a mental situation. But in actual life, he takes part. He intermingles with people, he interacts, and he cooperates. So these are two different things. Whether we are writing our agenda or Allah's agenda, this question, this contradiction we are trying to create here is irrelevant in Islam. In the case of the Muslim Ummah, there is nothing called our agenda and Allah's agenda. This question is rightly asked when we talk about a Jahili society. But we assume, and we take it for granted when we talk about a mission-oriented society, a Muslim society, then their agenda is Allah's agenda. The difference is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the agenda for us, that is the absolute ideal. What we do is try to struggle to realize this ideal. And in this course, we cannot always attain the ideal as it is. We fall short. But the more we struggle, the more we try to perfect our action and try to come close to the ideal, the better Muslims we are. In formulating our agenda, I think the first job we should do is a housekeeping job. We should try to see where our strength is, where we can make a difference, where we can make a difference in the American life, in the American society, where our consent and endorsement is needed, and where our contribution is needed, is vital to the society. In terms of number, how many are we? Are we strong enough? Do we speak in the name of a large, strong constituency? In terms of representation, whom do we represent? In terms of relations, what kind of social relations we have with all sectors of the American society? In terms of resources, what resources we have? I think we have a lot of potentials to create a strong political force in this society, a force that will make people listen to us, will make people consider our opinion and become sensitive to our presence in North America whenever they are taking a decision or making policies. It remains to organizations like ISNA to tell us how many Muslim voters we have in North America. But one thing for sure, we represent a large spectrum, a wide range, diverse population in North America. We represent Arabs, we represent blacks, we represent Asians, we represent white Americans, we represent immigrants, we represent indigenous people, we represent a lot of people. We come from different places, and our community is so rich and diverse. That's important. Where does America need us? We have to think of that. America, talking about the local scene, we know our community also is composed of different kind of people. along class lines. We have professionals, we have business people, we have people in the working force. Among ethnic groups, as I mentioned, we have a diverse affiliation to all kinds of people in this country. And each one of these groups have its own special and particular contribution to make. We have scientists, we have academicians, we have engineers, we have doctors, we have business people. Each one of them, if we develop our potential, will have a very important contribution to make. We represent the whole Muslim world. We have some 50 independent Islamic states which has representation in our community. We have the same, probably same number of countries or more where we have sizable, important minorities also. So we have a very important representation which, if we use it wisely, we can make a difference in the American society, in the decision-making process in this country, especially in international affairs. There are so many issues which does concern us. In terms of social reform, we have a contribution to make in the family life. The American family is facing great crisis. I think as Muslims, we are in a good position to make a contribution. In terms of morality crisis, we have solutions to offer. In terms of civil rights and human rights inside America, we are more concerned with these issues more than anyone else because of two reasons. First, it affects us directly more than anyone person. I myself, I am a black person. I am an Arab, and I am a Muslim. And in each one of these, I have been discriminated against. And I see this every day in my life. Questions of civil rights, of human rights, is important to us. We are the one who benefit from that. We are the one who are suffering from that. And we are the one who also have solution to these problems. America, being a country which is increasingly getting involved in international affairs, also needs us. First, I mentioned that if we use wisely our relation with the Muslim world, we have a lot to say about the American policy, American foreign policy, at least in those regions in the world. So the question of international cooperation and international peace concern us on one hand, and we can play a role in it on the other hand. Where the American legitimate interest lies in the world, we have a say. If the Middle East is important for America, then the main issues in the Middle East, one is Palestine, two is the oil, three is the geopolitics of the Middle East, the significance of the strategic position of the Middle East and the Middle East nations. In Africa, what concerns America concerns us, and we can play a role in that too. Africa is a Muslim continent. The majority of the African population is Muslims. The majority of the African states are Muslim states. The main problems of famine, refugees, civil wars, all concern us. Even the apartheid system in South America, which seems to, for one reason or another, concern the American government and the American public, we have something to say about that. We are in Asia, and if the movement of civil rights in the Soviet Union concerned anybody, it concerns a Muslim more than anyone else. All the hot spots now in the Soviet Union are Muslim areas. What I wanted to say, whether in internal policies or in international affairs, we have a lot of potentials to influence and affect the course of policies the United States of America is trying to take. We have a special, particular interest in that, and we have the resources to make a difference also. If we are well organized, if our priorities are right, then we could not be ignored. Our endorsement is needed, our consent is needed, our contribution is needed. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم. السلام عليكم.
السلام ورحمة الله. الله أكبر. جزاك الله خيرا أخي قطبي. And now with Dr. Islam Siddiqui, a brother who has been for a long time involved in the political process. We are going to enjoy his presentation, and he's an on-time man. Inshallah, we will have about 30 minutes for audience participation. When the time comes, we would like to remember that to use the microphone here in the middle. Please, Akhi Islam.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين. Ahmad, Mr. Chairman, brothers and sisters in Islam, just because we are having this conference is a significant issue, right there? This one, okay. Because this is the first such conference to increase the political awareness of Muslims in America, let me just set the stage for this discussion. When we talk about setting the agenda, we're talking about setting the agenda, which is the agenda of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Following the Quran and the Hadith, this is granted that we cannot deviate. Those Muslims who claim to be chasing some personal goals or egos, they have no place in setting the agenda for Muslims. So what we're talking about, setting the agenda for Muslims in America as a bloc and individuals following the Islamic principles in America, because we have a lot to offer to America. Speakers after speakers yesterday and some this morning have already gone into the quotations from the Quran and Hadith, why as a Muslims we should be involved. The question here is not we should have a choice, but we have a moral obligation and religious obligation, because the Quran asks us to enjoin what is right and condemn and forbid what is wrong. And this is where we are. Now, when we talk about setting agendas, we have the agenda of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What we are talking about, a blueprint or a plan of action, if you will, to achieve that goal, where this society, which began as mainly a Christian society, now is called Judeo-Christian society. Our immediate goal should be to change the society to Judeo-Christian Islamic society. Overall, our goal should be to integrate Islamic values and principles in the decision-making and policy-making levels of this government, whether it be at the state level, county level, and national level. As a group, we do not have voice as a Muslim lobby or Muslim group, and this is where we should be concentrating our efforts. If you ask for a number of issues where Islam has to offer, there are plenty. Look at the problem of homelessness, the problem of drugs, and abortion, and a lot of other issues. Islam has definite position, but what we are doing, we're talking amongst ourselves. We are not going to the American public to explain these issues and explain our positions. Unless we explain and get involved in explaining that position, the American public and the elected officials are not going to know what Islam is and what Islamic position is. So therefore, brothers and sisters, I implore you to get involved. I'll give you the example for our women friends and the sisters. There's an organization started in California, it's called Mothers Against Drunken Driving. Islam is very definite that you do not drink. We can make inroads into organizations like MAD, which stands for Mothers Against Drunken Driving, because that shows that we can get involved and explain the positions of the Islamic values that we do not drink. The drugs issue, and a lot of other Siraj Wahaji's work was mentioned here. We have to explain what the Islamic injunctions are and be involved in whether it be local level or state level or national level. In view of this broad agenda, and the time is short, I'd like to present a plan of action, or a blueprint, if you will, a 10-point plan. First is Muslims must become involved in the political process at all levels of government, especially the local level, which is the city and the county. Our masajids are surrounded by a lot of crime, the drug problem. We should be able to work with the city council, the city boards, in terms of cleaning that atmosphere around our masajids and explain what Islam stands for as a society. The family values, the same way we can explain and get involved at the city level. The Board of Education, the PTAs, Parent-Teacher Associations, where we have certainly something to explain and something to offer to the American public. Same thing applies to the state as well as federal levels. Number two, Muslims must strive to improve the image of Muslims and Islam in America. Every day you see the headlines in the newspaper which talks about Islamic terrorists or Muslim terrorists. Ummah in this front has done it. Just this crisis which is going on, Ummah held a news conference in San Francisco as well as in Sacramento, where we went on the airwaves explaining the crisis which is there. We condemned the violence and hostage taking, but at the same time we said this series of violence was started not by the Muslims, but it was started by the Israelis, and that where we should pinpoint, and we should be working with the media in terms of putting the right perspective. Our children who are bombarded with anti-Muslim bias, we should be trying to get them involved to explain the true and correct picture what's going on. Number three, we should focus on the human rights issues. This is one area we hear only about the chosen people who are being discriminated and their human rights are violated. We don't hear the media talk about the crimes and the persecution of Muslims in Russia, or say in Palestine, or in South Africa. We should be working and trying to explain not only to the media but the elected officials, when you amend a bill in the US Congress to allow more immigrations for Soviet Jews, or say Soviet evangelical people, or for Soviet Ukrainians, there are Muslims also who are being persecuted. We should also be working through our lobbyists in Washington, D.C., if we can establish one lobbyist, to amend those bills and testify in terms of getting the human rights policy of US consistently for all people, oppressed people of the world, and not just a few chosen people. Number four, we must begin with the basics in the political process, and that is not talk about getting senators elected or congressmen. I hear a lot of Muslim brothers talk about that. The agenda should include become involved from the basic level of local and county level by working for different campaigns, working in terms of the assembly districts, congressional districts. Our candidates for offices should know how many Muslims are there in their constituency so that you can effectuate the election. In California in 1986, the Senate race was decided by 120,000 votes. And Ed Shaw, who was the Republican candidate and not very ardent supporter of Israel, was defeated. If Muslims were a bloc and we had voted as a bloc, we could have effectuated the election in California differently. And this is just one example. There are other examples which go the same way. Number five, we must play an active role in the voter registration. Right now, there is no organized Muslim bloc of voters, as I said. If we can work hard in each community, in each state, and register, say, 100,000 voters, Muslim voters, in Illinois, California, or say New York, we can have a voice in the party affairs, whether it be Democratic or Republican, and those politicians in power structure will be willing to pay attention to the Muslims because we have got something to offer. Right now, we don't have that. So I like to urge in planning an agenda for the 1990s to keep that in mind. Number 6, Muslims must provide financial support to those candidates who are friends of the Muslim. There are candidates who do not want to talk to us. Then there are candidates who have been brave enough to associate and come to our meetings, which we call. We should be able to help those candidates, both not in election but re-election of those candidates. Number 7, we should also form clubs in each counties, and these clubs refer to Democratic club and as well as Republican clubs. In California, we have been very successful in formulating those clubs. There are clubs which are called American Muslim Republican Club or American Muslim Democratic Club. This was an example of successful policy where we met at the state Democratic Convention and we were able to pass a resolution which essentially condemned any stereotyping of Muslims in the media. And that was a success because the Muslims worked as a team, and what the success really was, 2,700 delegates on the convention floor heard this was going on, this was the wrong thing to do, and they condemned it. So State Democratic Party went on record condemning that kind of actions. It's symbolic, but what it says is they heard there was a problem and there were Muslims who were working to rectify that problem. Number 8, we should also form a national media, either through a news pool or by newspapers or television stations. Our youngsters especially have a lot to play a role in this thing because we need to create a cadre of people who are going to play a role in terms of getting the Islamic agenda out to the public. Number 9, number 10 is finally that Muslims must form strategic alliances with other organizations. There are organizations which we don't want to have anything to do with, despite the fact they may have something to offer because their agenda is not Islamic. I'll give you an example. If there's a gay organization which want to form alliances, we should never form an alliances with people who do not have an Islamic agenda. But on the contrary, if there's a cause like the Palestinian cause, and we have people like the ADC or NAAA, National Association of Arab Americans, we have an agenda, we have common interests, we should be supporting their cause and our cause in turn. In conclusion, the following 10 suggestions should be seriously considered in formulating an agenda. What I have outlined here in the interest of time is brief summary of what can be done and should be done as a Muslim agenda. What the success of this will depend after we go back from here, whether we can motivate the Muslim brothers and sisters and youth in our hometowns, in our cities, in our states, to do what I have just outlined and inshallah change the whole perceptions and bring about a change where we can have an effective Muslim lobby in America. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah. Jazakallahu khairan, Brother Islam Siddiqui. And now to the important role of our discussant, Professor Imtiaz Ahmed, Syed Imtiaz Ahmed.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, As-salatu wa-salam ala Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain. A'udhu billahi minash shaitani rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As the brother chairman here explained, my purpose here is not to really inject my own ideas, but to primarily discuss and to elaborate and to possibly accentuate what the other speakers have said. So I didn't have to prepare for this purpose. But what I did write a few questions, and I think these questions or points might be relevant to you because what I would like you to do is to place yourself when you were listening to speakers or when I elaborate on what they have said or discuss what they have said, anything that you find requires some action on your part, you begin to think, what do I do to achieve that goal? Anything that you feel is not clear to you, what do I do to achieve that goal? So in that sense, I would like you to be all involved. As the last speaker says, let us be involved. Let us see how you can make things better compared to what you may find are deficiencies. Essentially, what I have here is 6 points, but 3 related to what I call analysis, and that is in the form of questions. What is the meaning of agenda for the Muslims? Almost every speaker talked about the agenda for the Muslims. But to my mind, I'm not sure at this time that whether or not we really have a clear picture, and perhaps we have to work further on it. What is this agenda? What are the various parts of this agenda? And I will highlight some parts that various speakers have identified. How do these parts relate to achieving the desired goals? Which means we must be able to put them together if they stand in isolated ways. And then, of course, the more important process of synthesis. After having talked and discussed and learned everything that we need to do, how do we go about doing it? And in that regard, identify the parts that appear feasible with a view to available resources, and perhaps more important, our ability to undertake them. Number 2, in synthesis, arrange the parts in some order of priority. And number 3, specify and organize the part in sufficient details, because this is something that I don't think this conference itself will achieve that goal. We all have to work on providing the sufficient details or necessary details to embark on this task of achieving the agenda. Beginning with our chairman, he said that this session, this conference is an opening a window into the future. And essentially what we are all doing or trying to do, joining hands with the speaker and joining minds with the speaker, is gazing through the window to the future. And the question that comes or should come to our mind, do we see something through that window? And if we see something, is it blurred? And can we unblur it enough so that we can see what is to be achieved? Beginning with our first speaker here, and as I comment or discuss the points raised by the speaker, I would like to, of course, state that if it turns out that the speaker gave you a message that was clearer than what I'm trying to do, please forgive me. I'll ask forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because at some time I may have to do rephrasing. And secondly, there were certain points common from speaker to speaker. So it is possible that in the beginning I may mention the name of a speaker and several points, and as I go down I may have few points. This does not imply that that speaker had very little to say, but perhaps that speaker was joining hands with the speakers who discussed earlier, although he spoke from his perspective. Sister Amina made several points in this case, and of course some points relate to the agenda. And in terms of, she said very clearly, and I think it's important, not to be involved in anything that permits the continuation of wrongdoing. We have to be very careful. Be involved, but make sure that you do not permit or condone or perpetuate the wrongdoing that you see around you. She also said, as other speakers said, that we have to find out what is the correct action, or the word here in this conference is agenda for Allah, or agenda of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, she said that we have opportunity to institute change. The challenge, of course, to us is, are we going to exploit or to make use of those opportunities to bring about the change? In terms of parts that will constitute this agenda, she referred to the need to educate ourselves. And in that regard, she says, perhaps we need to have workshops on public speaking, on media, on voter registration, and so on. So a variety of forms of education. We need to see, in fact, how we can be instrumental in removing the misunderstandings. So one important part of our agenda is to remove the misunderstanding. And she gave her own example of a talk she gave on various punishments according to Islamic Sharia. And when she began the talk, there was a lot of misunderstanding, and at the end there was a much clearer understanding. And I shared that sentiment with her. We found there are things that for the audience at large are very difficult to understand, but we should not deviate from the truth. And if you speak with truth and you speak clearly enough, you will find the audience, beginning with the hostility, later on would have a much better understanding of your message, in a sense, rather than trying to compromise or dilute your message. As we embark on this process of articulation or clarifying what this message is, it cannot be done without understanding. And of course, it must be done in a way that avoids any what you call compromises of what the message is. She says, of course, and as other speakers said, that people are suffering from a malaise. The society at large is suffering from a malaise. And we, in fact, can be instrumental in removing their suffering. And of course, this is incumbent. This message was shared by not only she said it, but every speaker repeatedly referred to the Quranic verses where it talks about the maruf and munkar. And it is our role to amplify the maruf and to inhibit the munkar. When we see something good, we must participate in amplifying it. When we see something wrong or bad, we must participate in inhibiting it, in a sense. She said, another speaker said it too, in fact, Brother Qutbi Almahdi, as I'll refer to later on, referred to Syed Qutb saying, and she said that we need not be introvert. In fact, it is very clear, because of our being Khalifatullah, we have to be extroverts, which means it is not enough for us that I understand Islam and I practice it, but Islam must emanate from us, from all of us. So in that sense, we must participate in bringing this message of Islam to others, and of course, find opportunity. She says we must attract people to Islam through articulation about what Islam is, and we should embark on a process of reversion of the problems, or reversion to proper solutions to the problems that exist in the society. And of course, there are choices to be made, and we cannot do all of it at the same time, at the same point in time, in the same place, and we have to look at choices. Going on to Brother Ghayth Nur Kashif, he commented, of course, the role of this conference, that it fulfills a great need, and we all share that sentiment, and we hope that we will be instrumental in bettering the American way of life, inshallah. He referred to the life of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and the holistic mission that he had. And this holistic mission included the political aspects of the society, the social aspects of the society, and the moral underpinnings of the society. So he did not focus on the moral underpinnings alone, but he took the entire spectrum and in fact dealt with it. And he said also, of course, that we cannot be, this message is coming out in different words, that Muslims cannot be isolationist, either isolationist in terms of confining the message to only certain values, only moral values, or isolationist in terms of confining certain things to our own self. And he said, another said, the society is in a chaos, and of course we need to focus on the processes that will evolve this agenda into a workable frame. He said that if we do not try to understand what others are planning for the future for us, then we will forfeit the right to our own future. And I hope you will share that sentiment that we have to be aware and alert. And he also referred to, of course, the need to be proactive and reactive. Perhaps if I can substitute a word, we need to be proactive. We have to have our own agenda. Regardless of what others are doing to us, we have to know what we have to do to our own self and to others. But then, of course, we have to understand what others are trying to do to us or may do to us. And I would say we have to be responsive to that, and we have to plan. And he, in fact, referred to the affair of Salman Rushdie that we all know. And our focus should be not to simply say, we are going to respond to Salman Rushdie, but how are we going to respond to the likes of Salman Rushdie that will appear in the future? And they will appear as a challenge to us, in a sense. And he, of course, indicated the need of balancing, of creating a balance in our communities and in our affairs, creating a balance among the haves and the have-nots, whether this is academically, professionally, or in terms of financially. Of course, this is incumbent upon us as being Muslims that we must create this balance. And of course, the need to mobilize. We can sit down and talk and discuss and whatever it is, But unless we go out and say, yes, I have a mission, I want to accomplish something, and you become, in fact, part of bringing about the change, this mobility. And he indicated the need of mobilizing you yourself as an individual. You say, I cannot work with anybody else. Mobilize yourself individually, but then you must go out and mobilize yourself collectively. Coming now to Brother Qutbi al-Mahdi, in fact, he said, again, emphasize the need to identify the Allah's agenda, and he indicated very clearly that we must avoid compromises. And he says we must participate. We don't have a choice. We have to participate. And he referred to, as I said, Sayyid Qutb saying, and his understanding of that word or that phrase. But he said that this participation must lead to our own enrichment and to the enrichment of others, and not to our deprivation, which means we should not try to participate and deprive ourselves of a system of the message of Islam in its holistic sense. He then raised a challenge, being, of course, in the position that he was, being among the persons who knows the Islamic Society of North America from within. He said it is a challenge that a society such as Islamic Society of North America must bring the diverse groups together. Whether that diversity exists in terms of our professionalism, some of us are doctors, some of us are engineers, or that diversity exists because we come from different backgrounds, we have different perspectives. Remember, we are human beings. Every one of us is different. We may all look at things somewhat differently. And as soon as somebody looks at something differently from us, we should not say, he's out. No, we must bring ourselves together in a sense, and we must, this ISNA can play that great role. He said we have a role to play in the terms of the quality of life for this society at large, but he also brought the point that this understanding, this agenda must also emanate further to the international scene, whether in terms of the conflicts that exist in the world, the wars, the miseries that those wars create, the refugees, that we must be participants in that agenda. Finally, of course, the last speakers coming to it, he emphasized, of course, again, the need for Allah's agenda. But he, of course, was perhaps more than others said we have to get involved. And I may share, I hope he would allow some difference of opinion. Yes, we must become involved, but ponder and pause before we become involved so that you do not lose something in the process. But he made it very clear that our involvement must extend to political apparatus in the society, and it must extend to social apparatus of the society, whether it is a county board, the school boards in the local area, whether it is a state bodies. And he brought the point that by becoming politically involved, we will, inshallah, succeed to put some items of the message of Islam on the political platforms of some society, some of the parties, and that may be a good achievement. And of course, he indicated the need to have alliances or to work with others. And inshallah, those are the points. Again, once again, I would like to take the blame for anything that I may have misconstrued or misstated. May Allah forgive me. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallahu khairan, Akhi Imtiaz Ahmad. I'd like to assure you that we are less critical than what you think, ya Akhi. Fortunately, we have almost 40 minutes, long 40 minutes. My appeal to brothers, sisters first, please. Can you clear the way for sisters? If you have questions, comments, you are kindly requested to direct the question to each or any of the panelists. As you know, Brother Islam Siddiqui, next to him is Brother Qutbi, then Brother Kashif, and Sister Amina Alsilmi. Please be precise, straight to the point. Our sister, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
All right, my question is regarding political involvement, and I'd like to direct it to Brother Islam. Now, as according to my understanding, in order to get politically involved, seriously in any event, on a national, federal, on a state or national level, we must align ourselves with a particular political party. And as I have understood, the Democrats' platform may differ with ours in certain respects, such as the abortion question, and the Republicans may likewise differ with our opinions as for foreign aid to Israel, for example. My question is, because I, in the future, inshallah, would like to get involved in politics, do we align ourselves with one of these political parties even though we differ with them on a particular thing, or do we run on an independent ticket disregarding the mainstream political party? I also would like to say that this one is for Amina, Sister Amina. Now, according to, the media question and our involvement in the media about the Salman Rushdie question, I'm from New York, and in New York we had organized a certain, political action group, but a media defensive thing where we wrote letters to the publishers and we sent out all these newsletters. And even though we'd sent like thousands of letters to the publisher before it even became a big issue, before it was published anywhere, eventually it had been published in America and in other countries. And the comment that I'd like to make is that we shouldn't be discouraged, even though it seems like a failure that we put in all this effort and we didn't get the thing that we wanted, the reaction that we particularly looked for. We did make an effort, and in that itself, that was something great, and we should be proud of that. And so many people say, well, there's nothing we can do about it because the Jews control the media. But I just want to make a comment and say that we should never be discouraged, and it's a gradual process. It won't happen overnight, and we should continue trying. And inshallah, Allah will guide us with His faith. So,
Thank you.
Both answer.
That microphone, Sister Amina, briefly. First, for the Salman Rushdie thing, less than a minute, please.
Assalamu alaikum. No, we should never be discouraged, but we need to learn to deal with the media more effectively than how we do at this time. I am a broadcast person, and I went into broadcasting after becoming a Muslim because I was devastated by the way Muslims were dealing with the media. The media is very important, and we have to use it, and we need to learn how to use it right. So this is what I am encouraging. We did use the media ineffectively in the beginning with Salman Rushdie. In the end, alhamdulillah, we became more sophisticated, more educated, and we dealt better with the media. We chose our people to deal better. We wrote our letters in better ways. And this is what we have to concentrate in dealing with the media.
Brother Qutbi, then Brother Islam, very quickly, do we have to work through a particular political party, be it the Republican or the Democrats?
No, I don't think so. I think we stand for our issues. And sometimes this backfires if you try to use one of these platforms, because then, first of all, you have already defined yourself or identified yourself with a particular group, and in this manner you have lost your leverage on the other, okay? So I remember we went through this in Canada. At one point, they told us, let us all vote en bloc to the Liberal Party because they are liberals. And we did that, and they lost the election, and the progressive conservative came into power, and they were very antagonistic and hostile to us. I don't think that is good policy. What you do, you make each political party forever running after you, okay? You don't say, I'm siding with this or I'm siding with that. You say, these are my demands. These are the issues I'm standing for. You people choose where to stand, and then you will get my support.
Please, Brother Islam, quick comment.
I think we have some difference here on the panel, sister. Your question was that it's a massive task, but we should never be discouraged. I will just remind you that you have a system where there's only two choices, major choices, Republican and Democratic. If we choose that neither of these parties really address the Islamic concerns, let's back out and be isolated. The danger in this is a lot greater. Therefore, I would say even one issue like the Palestinian issue, Muslim brothers at the Atlanta Convention put a show, although they did not make full strides, but there was a demonstration, there was an issue discussed. Same way in California, State Democratic Party. We had about an hour and a half debate on the Palestine issue. The resolution was diluted, but one thing we accomplished, we really demonstrated to 2,700 Americans that there's a problem and it needs to be addressed. So I personally believe that this, if you cannot change the system by hand, you're doing it by pen and efforts rather than just hating in your own mind, which is the least of the believers.
Jazakallahu khairan. We are going to request the distinguished panelists to restrict their response to 1 minute because we lost already 15 minutes. So I'm going to request the brothers who raise questions to at least, if you believe in equality, don't exceed 1 minute. Please.
I hope it'll take only 1 minute, but I had a couple of comments because I've been listening with interest to all of the discussants. First, I'd like to say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and Assalamu alaikum to all of you in this room.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
I would say it's a blessing whenever Muslims get together, and it's a blessing that Muslims are coming together to discuss the political system. But I dare say that's not enough. And to me, there's a challenge to this group here in this room. Is it the desire of the Muslims to be politely recognized as a special interest group in America? Or is it the desire of the Muslims to be on the cutting edge of social change here in America? To me, that's the challenge. Because you see, America is fundamentally a wicked system. And I can say that having been born here, lived here 34 years, I'm a Muslim of African American descent, and America was built on a lie. And I have to say that if you want to understand what attracts Islam to African Americans, using myself as an example, we see Islam as a path toward freedom, as a path toward social change. And those of you who were born into an Islamic society may just take Islam for granted. But to us, it's a conscious choice. And we see that Islam holds the answers. And we would like very much for the Muslims as a community to be relevant and to be active for social change. Getting to the point is this.
Minute is over.
All right. My hope for this conference is that the Muslims will study, those issues that affect the African American community. There was a black agenda formulated during the '88 campaign. You should learn who is Dr. Lenore Fulani, who was on all 50 ballots throughout the country. Just to throw out a question to Brother Kashif, since we're honoring El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, which is a great thing here, I would like for you to perhaps discuss his analysis of the ballot or the bullet and how it relates to our meeting here today.
But before that, in a minute, Akhi Kashif, is America fundamentally wicked? Is it based on a lie?
Slavery, and this is something that those of us who were born here will never
Your opportunity will be extended. Please have a seat.
Okay, thank you.
Very briefly, courageously, we want to hear you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.
I think that the values that the American people brought to this country were taken to a great extent from much of the values that were brought, that were taken from the Islamic moral ethics, and actually simply human ethics. What has happened is that the economic system in America and the greed that comes into any society or any religion takes over, therefore. So therefore, what has happened, I think this is what Brother Hadori was talking about, is that the country over a period of time has lost those initial values, and in some cases, the initial motivation was not quite as sincere as it should have been. And therefore, that's why someone can easily make and to a degree justify a statement such as that.
Jazakallahu khairan. Go back as early as the children of Adam. One of the brothers was not necessarily motivated by an innocent motive when he killed his brother. So the dilemma has been with us for a long time. Yes, please.
Assalamu alaikum. I'll try to make this brief. Several of the panelists mentioned that we're fighting like a two-front war. That is, internally we're trying to change the system, and externally we're speaking out against injustices across the seas. And for that, we need on the local level to organize, to, as Sister Amina put it, we have to have education and propagation, learn to work through the media. And that is to influence the outside community, but also we have to know ourselves. I think that we have to know ourselves where we stand, because there's a lot of confusion within the community itself as to where we stand on certain issues. And this group here, I think, shows initiative because we came to this convention because we're motivated. And if some of you listened to the speech yesterday, there's a 65% in his estimation that are interested but are indifferent, and they can be found in their own masjids. So I'm wondering what ISNA or Impact or whoever it is doing to try to consolidate them, to reach out to them instead of them coming to these conventions and trying to form a network, or so we can eventually vote as a bloc.
Perhaps you should get a fuller answer in a different platform. The very existence of this conference is an evidence that we are trying our best to mature our understanding. And we hope, as Brother Islam nicely pointed out, to repeat this experience in every masjid, in every community, so we create this awareness and become part of the solution rather than being part of the problem.
What is being done then? Is there any official program, like a reach out kind of thing? Or, I mean, is there anything we can do to help? Is there anything being established right now? I mean, we've established that, yes, we must go and organize. Now what's being done about it? Is this not, I mean, if you want to be the umbrella for the community, let's reach out. I mean, I'm just wondering.
If you sit down, I will answer you. Please attend the 26th annual convention, especially the business session. And I want you to challenge the ISNA's administration there by posing the same question, what has been done? And you will find a fuller answer there. Please, have a minute. By the way, any response? Kashif? Yes. Please.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
It's all good that we're all talking about getting involved in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party and getting active as far as lobbying Congress goes. But, okay, can you hear me now? Okay. It's great that we're getting involved in the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, lobbying Congress, but you haven't really talked about how we're going to achieve these goals, and you've said that we want to do this, but who's we? Where is our sense of community? I mean, it's more like, oh, yes, ISNA wants to do this. I want to do this. Some Muslims may want to do it personally, but where is that sense of community? Maybe we do have 5 million to 10 million Muslims, but where are they? I mean, how do we organize them? How do we get them under one voting block? And where will we get our leadership from? We haven't even spoken about leadership. And the first thing the Prophet, when he made his community in Medina, established leadership. And where is our leadership?
I only can answer one question. Where are they? They are living in the United States of America. Akhi Qutbi, would you like, or Brother Islam, you care to comment, please?
I think to answer this question, definitely we are not at a stage now to see where these people are. We are just now brainstorming all these seminars about that. And people will get organized when they have an immediate problem, when they feel the problem. If you go to your own Muslim neighborhood and tell the Muslim population there somebody is out to kill you all, you will see that they get organized next day, and they will try to defend themselves or cry or do whatever they want to do. I think our problem, there is not enough consciousness with the issues. Once we raise the consciousness of the people to that level, they will immediately organize. People organize when they have a problem, an immediate problem or an immediate challenge. And to make them feel it, you need a lot of awareness campaigns like this. So I think this is the job of the community, organizations, ISNA chapters, individuals, wherever they are, to try to do that.
Brother Kashif has a brief comment, then we'll go to Brother Islam.
Very, very, very briefly, to the young man, you asked for the leadership. Take the leadership. Take it. Take the leadership. This is the way that you get things done. You know, you have the idea. Don't wait for anybody. If you don't see the leaders out there, you know a job's got to be done. Get out here and do it. Organize. Get the people who think like you think. You want to get together. And if you're having some problems, then go to the elders or go find the help but do it. This is the way that it's got to be done. For those, there are people, go into other communities, go into the inner city. Maybe you're looking out from, maybe out at a distance someplace. You don't know what's going on. Find out where the action is, so to speak. Join that, learn from it, but take the leadership yourself. Don't be waiting around for years. Take it.
You scared some people, Akhi Kashif, when you said take the leadership.
Yes, sir.
Please, along with the leadership, take the responsibility. Take the responsibility. Akhi Islam?
I think there's a trend here. What we're discussing, you can call this glass half empty or half full, depending how you see it. About 82, when Ummah was established in California, I had problem people signing a petition protesting to the bombardment of Lebanon by cluster bombs by Israel. But now, if I go around in the Muslim community in the Bay Area, there's more awareness. So what I'm saying is essentially is what the fact we're discussing this issue right now, Muslim awareness of the political process. Alhamdulillah, that's a positive change. It's taking us a lot of time, but one thing I disagree, we are good in reacting to crises, being defensive and reactive. What we have to do is become more proactive, have plans for reacting to future crises which are about to develop.
We have long 10 minutes. You want to say something? Please, take your minute.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Sheikh Ahmed, perhaps you can help me with this question. I want to know why, if we're discussing the future, if we are planning an agenda for the future of Islam in America, why there is so little emphasis on the people of the future, the youth of America.
I take an issue with you. We have great love for the youth, Akhi, and we did not do a perfect job, but we have every determination to invest in the future, in the youth. Inshallah, we can take that issue in the smaller session when we have to face the challenge of specifically articulating the agenda for the future and securing a prominent place for youth involvement, training, participation, whatever. We'll keep that in mind, inshallah. The question will keep ringing. Yes, sir.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
A lot of what we've been trying to accomplish in the United States, other Muslims in other secular nations like in Britain have already got the ball rolling. Is there anything that we can, learn from them? Any shortcuts that that we can avoid some problems, things like that?
It could be, or Brother Islam.
Not only we can learn from other Muslims in other countries, even in here, we can learn even from our so-called enemies. We do not have to copy them, but we can make use of some of the techniques used by our enemies here. So I think there's a lot to be learned, and if there's something good, as long as it's not un-Islamic, we should not be hesitant to pick up those strategies which will help the Islamic cause in this country. So I agree with you that we can learn a lot.
But if the question was about communication with other Muslim minorities in the West, there is. It should grow. There is. Akhi Ghalib. Alaikum assalam.
I just wanted to make a quick observation for the benefit of all. I have attended many of ISNA conventions, and we are here for 2 days, and all these speeches and discussions gives us this spiritual high. Maybe that's not the Islamic word to use. And we leave, then we have a lot of ideas that makes us dream. I guess dream is good if you work towards realizing it. This time there was a lot of discussion on whether it's halal or haram to be involved in the politics here. But the thing is that we're here. I mean, that's the fact, and the important thing is to take the action. One of the things I felt that we all are here, we're professionals, we're business people, engineers, students, whatever. We spend 3 days and a few $100s out. When we leave, what are we going to take with us? At least if we could exchange cards, come to know each other, sort of form a network. When we go back, we can call each other or have questions, we work together. That would be something that would be nice to take from here. Another thing I thought it was missed out when we talked about various resources we have is our centers. And we talked about what the Sunnah of the Prophet was. The basic thing is we are making a centers for just prayers, but at the time of the Prophet, when he was starting off, they did a lot more than that. To give you a quick example, I was in Washington and spent a day in the DC area last couple of days, and I saw in the tour book the Islamic Center. I kind of felt good because, you know, in the nation's capital, we have an Islamic Center, when thousands of these people are going to go there, and they will get fantastic information about Islam, and, you know, but I was quite disappointed. Then I was at Smithsonian Institute, and I saw the information on Islam. It started off with the spelling of the Quran. Well, that may not be so bad, but then it's just not the right information. And it gives the statistics that are 400 million Muslims. We're 1 billion. You know, these are the things I think we got to correct first, because political action goes hand in hand with the dawah, and we're not, you know, like compartmentalizing things. We got to look at the total picture and work towards it. There are things that are done in different parts of. I come from Detroit. Just to give you a quick example, someone brought up the Rushdie, and we were trying to be aggressive, and we went to the newspapers. They won't give us what we wanted, so we spent $8,000 and took an ad. And alhamdulillah, we had 500 calls from it, asking for information on Islam. Anyways, what I wanted to say that there are other brothers who might have done things like that, and if we could leave from here so that we can follow up until the next convention and come back stronger and motivated, I think that'll help. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. It's a challenge to everyone, but in particular to Dr. Chima, and we hope to find an innovative way to fulfill the wish of our brother Ghalib, inshallah. Please, akhi.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
First of all, I'd just like to make a statement of correction. I think I heard earlier that this conference, this political awareness conference, was one of the first of its kind. Point of correction, there have been several political conferences or political awareness seminars held throughout this country, specifically organized at one time by the American Muslim Mission. And obviously its constituency basically was those brothers and sisters who, alhamdulillah, as a result of that experience, was introduced to the idea of the political process and the need for Islamic involvement. So this process has been an ongoing process. I have a couple of points I'd like to question, really. One is that I'm having problems understanding the idea of buying in part of the so-called Muslim agenda versus the idea of Islamic movement. Are they one and the same, or are they correlated, or just what's the distinguishing points between the two? Because obviously Islam and its holistic approach not only deals with politics, it deals with culture, it deals with economics, it deals with family life, and all the kinds of human systems. The other point is that I want to have one of the panelists address is that as we in this country become mouthpiece for political circumstances that are occurring in the Muslim world, what is that reciprocal relationship to the Muslim world that it should have in regards to the plight of Muslims in this country? Specifically, and I speak from my experience, Muslims many Muslims who happen to be from the African American ethnic group, who, as Brother Kashif has said, there's some unbalance there as it relates to resources, as it relates to not necessarily monetary resources, human resources. Ideas like if we talk about making an impact upon a constituency, particularly in our inner cities. We have one group of brothers and sisters who are professional, who are business. They can organize business workshops, educational workshops. They can have health fairs. This is the kind of thrust that one group, the Panthers, who was quite influential in terms of developing a constituency among the inner city, and that they provided services whereby the people was brought into to see what the Muslim actually stand for. Thank you.
Jazakallahu khairan. I have to thank you, Akhi, for sharing that valuable information, that there has been previous attempts. In answer and response to your question, Brother Qutbi, would you like to comment very briefly? We only have a couple of minutes, according to my watch. No, my watch is the Great, Sheikh. Please.
If I understand the last question properly, and related to what I said in my presentation, I think one reservation people were making here is that to get involved in the political process here, we are probably forgetting the basic things that we are Muslims and we are not Americans. And all this discussion about how, are we Muslims or are we American? If we started to say what is the relation between what's going on in the Muslim world, why does it concern us as American Muslims here, then we are falling in this pitfall. I mentioned it in two regards. The first one is that if the American system, which is not an Islamic system, cares for the primary materials they are getting from the Muslim world, or for international markets in the Muslim world, which is a large part of the world, or their geopolitics as far as the Muslim countries are concerned, or international peace, then if they want to talk to those people there, they have to make sure that the Muslims inside America are not angry because we are one ummah. So if we are in the political process and we remember we are Muslim first, American second, or that we are American Muslims, then the system itself will realize this fact and they will change their attitude towards us. If they want the oil, they have to make sure they are in good terms with the Muslim population in America. If they want markets overseas, they have to make sure they're in good terms with us. The second respect is the international. If they want to improve their image as an international power, they cannot be in peace inside America with themselves if they continue to support Israel unconditionally or to support any repressive regime which is oppressing Muslims in the Muslim world, because here we are going to raise hell against them. So I think in this respect, this is important, significant, and it's an important resource. We should develop it, and we should use it wisely.
With your permission, Akhi Kashif, Brother Ali is looking at me very seriously, and I'm going not only to apologize to you, but to our brothers who took this stand. We are out of time. Please remember the following, that the learning process is continuing. In the coming session, inshallah, we are going to share the experience of others, and we are going to hear many brothers. In the following session, there is the decision-making process and Muslim involvement. There is a lot to be said and discussed. In conclusion, I have benefited a lot, I'm sure as many as, like many of you, by this process of thinking loudly together towards formulating a Muslim agenda for the future. By definition, Muslim is Islamic. It's against exploitation, against any bias, and it is for the interest of not only Muslim, but mankind and all living beings. And I'm citing Quran here. Jazakumullahu khairan for making this session a very interesting one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Before you leave, please, those who have registered, they should pick up their lunch tickets from the registration. The lunch will be served at Regency B. It's to the left, and there is a corridor at the end of the corridor. So please proceed for that. Those who have parked their cars, please take from the registration a special sticker so that you will get the reduced rate. There is a small announcement. A group of brothers from Albania would like to see you after Salat al-Dhuhr in the press room. By the way, Salat al-Dhuhr will be after lunch. Lunch will be served at 1:30. So please proceed. Jazakumullah khair.
After we take a short break, we will bring you more from the Muslim Americans Political Awareness Conference.